I'd be curious to see what the market is for these guys. Brooks specifically, you can envision him fitting on a lot of teams, but it needs to be somewhere where I think ideally you're not relying on him to be even more than your third or fourth offensive guy. And I'd probably just creep it down more so to fourth there. Atlanta next to Trey Young, where they have John Collins and just some of these other wings, that would be super interesting. They do have Cam Reddish floating around up there, and they're a team that's interested in winning now. Just imagining his defense next to Trey Young, that would certainly be a fit. Uh, Boston, going through all the teams here. Brooklyn's not going to have the assets. Charlotte for Kyle Anderson or Dillon Brooks. I probably might like Anderson there a little bit better, but it doesn't really matter. They don't have a ton that they can trade at the moment after extending Terry Rozier. They have like these bigger salaries, and Terry Rozier was a bigger salary to begin with. Chicago's already done all they can do. Cleveland's been floated around for Dillon Brooks. I wouldn't hate it. Just another defensive presence on the wings for them. They have Isaac Okoro, and then their second best perimeter defender is probably Larry Nance Jr., which is a problem. Dallas could probably use either one of these guys. They do need more defense on this team. Kyle Anderson's shot creation would be interesting, even though he doesn't space the floor in a traditional sense. I might be more intrigued by Dillon Brooks for the defense he would bring there. Dillon Brooks' defense in Denver would be really interesting. I just don't know what deal you're building around there, even if we're getting into the, December aughts. Like, is Memphis at all interested in Bol and then a distant first round pick? Would you move Monte Morris in that deal? How much does it actually interest Memphis? He could be a solid backup point guard. He's entering the first of a 3-year, $27 million extension. So something like PJ Dozier and Monte Morris and a second for Dillon Brooks, like, does that get the needle moving there? I honestly don't know. Dillon Brooks in Detroit, maybe. That could be semi-interesting. I just don't know who they're going to want to give up in that scenario. Golden State, they're more built for a blockbuster trade. Houston, I don't really think either one of these players makes a ton of sense. They have enough sort of flyer defensive guys, and Dillon Brooks isn't super young to begin with. Don't like either of these players in Indiana. I don't think this is the season for Los Angeles to go after either one of these guys, and I'd question whether they actually have the assets to get either of them, although Anderson would be, in the absence of Kawhi Leonard, very different players, but would be super interesting there. The Lakers can't make a real trade right now. They're not going to trade Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, or LeBron James. Their fourth highest paid player at the moment is Kendrick Nunn, who they signed and can't not trade until mid-December. And then after that, the fifth highest paid player and then most likely player removed is Marc Gasol, who is making under $3 million. So, yeah. Miami, Dillon Brooks would be right up their alley, sort of some defensive grit without any guaranteed shooting. Maybe even Kyle Anderson fits that mold. I just don't like neither of those two are going to fit that bill there. A lot of people, someone mentioned that they want to see Dillon Brooks in Milwaukee. Interesting fit. Milwaukee just doesn't have the assets to get it done. Minnesota could be fun. Could you argue that with Anthony Edwards there, is it worth going with Malik Beasley for a Dillon Brooks straight up swap? I would think that Memphis probably needs to include someone or something else there. But Dillon Brooks could just help them out a ton. Or if they want to acquire Kyle Anderson to play the 4, I don't think that's necessarily the type of guy they're looking for. But they're one of the rare teams that can talk themselves into both players. New Orleans could really use Dillon Brooks. How much younger does Memphis want to get? Or how much, let's say, iffier does Memphis want to get? Like, can there be something built around Nickeil Alexander-Walker? You're not going to get Trey Murphy from New Orleans, or you're going to get one of the other first-round picks that they can move out of this. I don't know that you're going to have any interest in a Jackson Hayes. That could be interesting. They also, New Orleans might not want to touch Dillon Brooks now that they have Josh Hart back under contract. Don't see the Knicks as a viable destination for either. They're one of the teams that just can't make a real trade for quite some time right now. Dillon Brooks might fit the gritty defensive mold, but they probably need more of a true wing and floor spacer, and neither Anderson or Brooks fits that mold. Brooks would come closest, but again, just too much variance on the offensive end. Oklahoma City, for neither, just at the point in the stage of their rebuild, though I would be intrigued by Dillon Brooks there. Ditto for Orlando. I wouldn't be intrigued by either of these guys there. That team still needs a ton of shooting. Philly, Kyle Anderson, just because of his shot creation, or even Dillon Brooks at this point, like guys who maybe are going to give you more looks in crunch time in the playoffs, but you're not going to put together like some of your best assets to go after these guys. Phoenix, I would kill. Kyle Anderson to Phoenix is one of my favorite scenarios. They do have Jalen Smith to start building out something. And then there's some of their salary filler wouldn't be eligible to later in the season, but they can do some immediate things if Memphis is willing to take on Dario Saric. Is that too much though? If you're Phoenix for Kyle Anderson, I think you could certainly argue, even though Dario Saric's injury is injured. Yes, if you're giving up Jalen Smith in that deal, Dillon Brooks could really work for them too, because it feels like they need that other sort of bigger wing ball handler. I don't know if Dillon Brooks qualifies a bigger wing, but he certainly is physical as one. That would be a team though to watch for either one of these guys to me. Like one to really keep your eyes on. Perhaps as we get more so into the season, Dillon Brooks in Portland would be huge, but I just don't even know if he's big enough. And then who are you moving for that? Like, okay, you have Derrick Jones Jr.'s expiring contract. Like you're attaching first round picks here. And then you've now lost, like, Derrick Jones Jr. can at least go up against some fours. I don't know that Brooks is going to give you that. You already have so much money invested in the under 6'4" club with Lillard, McCollum, and Powell. And are you even going to trade a first round pick? Not when you're not sure what's going to happen with Dame. Dillon Brooks in Sacramento, man, imagine having him, Halliburton, and Davion Mitchell on the same team. I don't know if it would cost you Davion Mitchell to get Brooks. I wouldn't do it if it did. If you could build something around Buddy Hield and other stuff, or is Memphis intrigued by Marvin Bagley? I would love to see Dillon Brooks in Sacramento, though. Still a team after finishing dead last in points allowed per 100 possessions last year. That could really stand to beef up its defense. San Antonio, I have no idea where they're going, so I'm not going to advocate for a Kyle Anderson reunion or going after Dillon Brooks, and they seem to have enough guys just along those sides. Ditto for Toronto. I think they're more concerned with like existing in the middle now, unless they're going to actually move Pascal Siakam, but they don't have a need for any of these guys really when you look at their defense already. Although, like, if you wanted to field a 5-man lineup of Fred VanVleet, Dillon Brooks, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam, I think you'd probably let up like 0 points per game. That's something to consider. Dillon Brooks or even Kyle Anderson in Utah would probably go a long way. Just guys, sturdier defenders, maybe more physical defenders than a Joe Ingles right now, or a Bojan Bogdanovic, obviously, that help you in the playoffs. Just don't know what you're giving up. You've already leveraged so much of your first round pick future, part of which is going to Memphis already, and they're not going to have a ton of interest in a Jordan Clarkson or Joe Ingles, given where they're at in their development. And you just shouldn't be moving Royce O'Neal if you're Utah. Washington, I wouldn't hate to see any of those guys there, really, Dillon Brooks or Kyle Anderson. And Washington is sort of like winish now if it's planning on keeping Bradley Beal, even though it moved Russell Westbrook. I just don't know who you're giving up for one of those guys. Do you consider moving a future pick? Probably more so for Dillon Brooks just because he's under contract, but then you still really need to trust him. This team does feel like it needs maybe a little bit more defense. And if Dillon Brooks is there to go along with Spencer Dinwiddie and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but even Kyle Kuzma, who's improved positionally on defense, there's a lot of different wing stuff you could do there. So I just went through the entire league on the Dillon Brooks, Kyle Anderson fits. You're welcome for that. I would predict that by the trade deadline, at least one of these two players is gone just based off Memphis's direction. Adam posed that it'll be an all or nothing proposition because Memphis will look to sell them both if they're not good at all. But if they, again, look like they're going to obliterate expectations and make the playoffs, they will be much less likely to do so and might just want to keep them. But that's interesting food for thought. My official prediction would be, though, I think at least one of them is going to be gone by the trade deadline.